Welcome to the Information and Leisure video lecture series. I am Dr. Jenna Hartello. This lecture in the series looks at information in hobby social worlds. The lecture begins with a recap of the serious leisure perspective and then focuses upon hobbies. Next, taking a socio-cognitive perspective, we'll explore information across the 5 main hobby types. The lecture ends with a conclusion and references. Studies of time use in North America have found that for most people, a typical day involves 4 types of activity: paid work, unpaid work, self-care, and free time. Leisure occurs within the last category, and the dictionary defines it as the use of free time for enjoyment. The serious leisure perspective, or SLP, is a theoretical framework of leisure developed by the sociologist Robert A. Stebbins. Distilled into a typology of leisure, it establishes the following. Casual leisure, which is encircled, refers to the relatively short-lived, pleasurable activities that require no special training to enjoy it, such as taking a nap or sipping a glass of wine. Project-based leisure entails a short-term, moderately complicated, creative undertaking, like making a Halloween costume or holding a neighborhood cookout. At the far right is devotee work, which is work that feels like leisure. At the middle of the diagram is serious leisure, which gives the whole framework its name. It is the systematic pursuit of an activity that participants find so substantial and interesting that in the typical case they launch themselves on a leisure career centered on acquiring and expressing its special skills, knowledge, and experience. There are 3 types of serious leisure: amateur, volunteer, and hobbyist. The distinctions between the 3 forms of serious leisure are complex and are put aside for now. That way we can focus on serious leisure, expressed as hobbies. In the SLP there are 5 types of hobbies: collecting, making and tinkering, activity participation, sports and games, and the liberal arts pursuits. Hobbies. In English, the word hobby comes from tourney horse or hobby horse, which was a horse costume used in seasonal folk dances. That contraption evolved into a diminutive toy horse on curved rockers, also called a hobby horse. For a child, riding a hobby horse was great fun. When referring to an adult, the horse was dropped and a hobby denoted an activity that someone does for pleasure when they are not working. In his book, Leisure and the Culture of Work in America, social historian Stephen Gelber has chronicled changing American attitudes towards hobbies. In the 1800s, work was largely agrarian and all-consuming. It left little free time. Hence, a hobby was considered eccentric and even a dangerous obsession. In the 1850s, the Industrial Revolution bifurcated the day into separate blocks of work and leisure time. Hobbies were cast as a wholesome alternative to the shadier pursuits of gambling, burlesque theater, or drinking in a barroom. In the 1900s, hobbies were further elevated as antidotes to the ennui of the workplace and seen as highly desirable. Hobbies remain so today. Returning to a concept from part 2 of this lecture series, hobbies generate a form of social organization known as a social world, a recognizable constellation of actors, organizations, events, and practices which have coalesced into a perceived sphere of interest and involvement for participants. Because hobbies generate social worlds, we can take a socio-cognitive approach to information in hobbies. From a socio-cognitive perspective, the social world in which the individual operates influences the use of information. To illustrate, consider the social world of any hobby to be like this sphere of phenomena coalesced around the shared interest in the hobby. The black dots are the people, activities, events, materials, and tools of the social world. The white space within is its history, culture, discourse, and shared understanding. Information can be thought of as the red threads that hold the social world together. Bates has said about information science, "We are always looking for the red thread of information in the social texture of people's lives." The socio-cognitive approach attempts to describe the social world with an eye to information. Socio-cognitivism can be applied to hobbies in the following way. Let's return to the serious leisure perspective framework and the hobbies. Each of the 5 main hobby types is a broad social world. Information researchers can focus on one main hobby type, such as collecting, and describe the information phenomena therein. But collecting itself has myriad smaller social subworlds, For example, there is stamp collecting, coin collecting, and many others. To be accurate, each of these subworlds break out into even smaller niche communities devoted to collecting specific artifacts. But we will stop at the level of collecting social subworlds. In the next section, I will describe each main hobby type in turn and characterize the nature of information. Then, drawing from the LIS literature, I will profile a case study within a hobby social subworld. Collecting. In the collecting hobbies, enthusiasts acquire specific items of interest and then carefully organize, catalog, and display them in a spirit of reverence. Collectors can obtain new objects actively by shopping around or passively as gifts. Some collectors are happy with anything that fits their theme, and others, known as completionists, aim to gather all of the known items in a specific set. It has been estimated that 1 of every 3 Americans collects something, though not all qualify as hobbyists. From a socio-cognitive point of view, what is the nature of information in the collecting hobbies? The collecting hobbies share a propensity for taxonomic information. It is essential for collectors to identify and then classify objects into different kinds of groups. It follows that detailed guidebooks and handbooks of collectible items are important information resources. The internet has been revolutionary in bringing far-flung collectors together to buy and sell collectibles and to exchange information. Among the main hobby types, this one has an affinity with library and information science, since we are collectors of books, documents, and information. The role of information in a community of hobbyist collectors is a case study of rubber duck collectors. Dr. Charlotte Lee, the paper's first author, holds the world record for the largest rubber duck collection and appears in the bathtub. Lee and Trace introduce a model of the relationships and information flows in the hobby social world. The paper outlines 12 types of information needs common to rubber duck collectors, such as how to care for or repair rubber ducks and the history of rubber ducks. Making and tinkering. The making hobbies are craft activities in which useful and decorative objects are created by hand or with simple tools. The tinkering hobbies entail do-it-yourself activities of building, modifying, or repairing things. Unlike many other leisure pursuits, the making and tinkering hobbies generate a durable end product. Cultural conventions notwithstanding, the making and tinkering hobbies are not limited to one sex and can appeal to a wide age range. It is possible that more people enjoy these hobbies than any of the other 4 types. The nature of information across the making and tinkering hobbies is highly technical, sometimes referred to as procedural knowledge or know-how. Participants in this hobby class must follow often complicated instructions that demand dexterity, that is, the ability to perform a difficult action skillfully with the hands. Do-it-yourself videos posted online have helped spread technical knowledge across these social worlds. Some making and tinkering hobbies generate unique documentary genres, such as recipes, patterns, and blueprints. My own dissertation research profiles information in the making and tinkering hobby of gourmet cooking. Taking an ethnographic approach, I interviewed gourmet cooks about their practice of the hobby and then photographed and analyzed their culinary information collection. The recipe is a unique and important instructional genre in this hobby. A model, shown here, identifies the information activities that underlie the cooking process, such as searching for, using, and annotating recipes. Activity participation. The activity participation hobbies require systematic physical movement that has intrinsic appeal and follows a specific set of rules. These pursuits are challenging and demand good physical conditioning, but are non-competitive. The many different subtypes of this class are organized by Stebbins as follows. Nature activities are experienced outdoors. They include nature appreciation, such as birdwatching, nature exploitation, such as fishing, and nature challenges, such as rock climbing. Corporeal activities focus more on conditioning the body, for instance cycling and martial arts. Because the activity participation hobbies break out into nature activities and corporeal activities, this social world is complicated information-wise. In the nature activities, information is situated in a particular place, namely the outdoors. There, information is experienced through the senses and the sight, sound, smells, and overall feeling of a place. Also important to the nature activities is logistical information to find and then navigate these environments safely. In the corporeal hobbies, information is embodied, which we will take up again shortly in a discussion of sports hobbies. Ed Hyatt and colleagues studied the use of modern technologies in the context of a nature challenge hobby of long-distance backpacking. Their research design involved a survey, interviews, and video diaries of participants in the TGO Challenge, a coast-to-coast crossing of the Scottish Highlands. Through a thematic analysis, the information behaviors associated with backpacking were seen as 3 stages: planning and organizing, communications, and navigating and tracking. Most backpackers used mobile information technologies in the field, sometimes in combination with conventional documents like paper maps. Information in this hobby is profoundly changing. Sports and games. A sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others. Games are mental competitions conducted according to rules. Games also have a goal, an always changing course, chance, a common experience, equality, and immersion into the world of the game. In sports, embodied or corporeal information is experienced through the situated and sensory body as it interacts with material objects, artifacts, and other people. Games, being mental competitions, may generate more rational information behaviors. Yet some games demand much imagination. There is still much to be learned about the nature of information in these domains. Here is Tim Gorachana's paper, Information on the Run, Experiencing Information During an Ultramarathon. It provides a glimpse of information in an individual sport hobby. Taking an auto-ethnographic approach, Gorachana systematically observed his own experience during a 100-mile ultramarathon. Elfrida Chapman's small worlds theory was invoked to explain the social and oral nature of information during the race, as when runners exchange insider phrases such as, "looking good," or "keep it up." The informational lore of running was also important, as contained in books, podcasts, articles, and films about running. But the primary information source during the ultramarathon was the author's own body, that is, corporeal information. How he felt, sensations of pain, breathing rhythms, and bodily clues about nutrition were experienced as the most crucial information across the run. Some of these dynamics are captured in a model of on-the-run information experience, shown here. Liberal arts pursuits. In the serious leisure perspective, Robert Stebbins defines a liberal arts pursuit as the systematic and fervent pursuit during free time of knowledge for its own sake. Enthusiasts strive for an understanding of, for example, arts, sports, foods, languages, and other topics listed here. Such hobbyists may be known as aficionados, buffs, devotees of a subject, lay experts, fans, lifelong learners, or armchair scholars. To be clear, these hobbyists immerse themselves in a subject for the sheer joy of learning about it. The liberal arts pursuits returns LIS to familiar territory, for the nature of information in the liberal arts hobbies is humanistic and largely documentary. Enthusiasts strive for a deep, indeed heartfelt, understanding of some part of the human experience. To that end, their information behaviors are twofold: information acquisition and information expression. Acquisition entails attentive reading, watching videos, listening to audios, participating in non-credit courses, or traveling. Interestingly, such systematic and fervent information seeking defies the principle of least effort, one of the best-known theories of information behavior. Liberal arts hobbyists also express their knowledge through casual conversation or more formal presentations, and they may disseminate their ideas online and in Wikipedia. This hobby class is interesting territory for our field because they have turned information behavior, which is usually seen as a problem, into sheer pleasure. Anna Louise Borinek conducted a thesis on avid liberal arts hobbyists with a passion for Greek mythology. To that end, she examined 9 topical websites produced by the hobbyists to deduce their information activities and document the website's informational properties. The hobbyists performed all 8 of the information activities on Anders Hector's model, especially an iterative process of unfolding and publishing. Through a bibliometric analysis, Borinek found that the hobbyists cited ancient primary sources such as Euripides and Homer, suggesting these hobbyists have closer ties to academia than previously imagined. Conclusion. By taking a socio-cognitive approach, one can discern informational patterns across the 5 hobby social worlds. Such patterns become even more distinct in narrower hobby social subworld. These conclusions were reached through deductive consideration of the activities performed in hobbies and drawn from a smattering of empirical studies of hobbies in the LIS literature. Much more descriptive empirical research is needed on information and hobbies, followed by inductive grounded theory development. Hence, this lecture provides tentative hypotheses and starting points to fuel discussions, questions, objections, and future research.